Hi, everyone. Welcome to WSA on Display, the 2021 degree show for the Welsh School of Architecture. Many of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Juliet Davis. I'm head of school, and I've been head of school for just a month, since the 1st of August. I'm really delighted to launch the outcome of what has been a giant effort over the past few weeks and months to pull together this representation of the school's work over the past year. As you look through our website, I hope you'll agree that it's an extraordinary marker of what's been an extraordinary year for us in the school, for architectural education, for Wales, the UK, and the world. It's among the best shows we've produced, I think, and in the hardest of circumstances. I see it as a testament to the determination, the creativity, and resilience of both staff, every single member of staff in the school, and students over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic to date. Oops. When you open the website, you'll become aware that the show this year actually comprises a number of different elements. There's this evening's launch of the digital exhibition and the digital exhibition itself, of course. But today also marks the start of the student-led festival, which runs all of next week, with each day focusing on a different theme and involving internal academic staff, students, and a great lineup of external speakers. There is also a yearbook, which is set out according to the same themes and which can be ordered through the website. The themes represent a distinctive curatorial approach which students have developed this year, rather than just arranging work according to years in the RIBA Part 1 and Part 2 degrees and across our PGT courses and indeed our postgraduate research as well. They've identified topics that run across years and run across programs, connecting different parts of our curriculum and different areas of study. So those themes are architecture and politics, urbanism and community, computation and innovation, history and heritage, and climate change. In gathering the work, as this slide shows here, they also invited contributors to the show to identify keywords for their project. So these also make up a rich range of sub-themes. And again, you'll find when you click on these different links that they show up projects that may be from very different areas of the school. When I went back to university for my RIBA Part 2 degree, after 2 years at Stanton Williams Architects, my boss gave me a pep talk. I think I was confessing that I felt a little bit reluctant to go back to university after my time in practice, feeling like I was a grown-up with a wage and working on 2 big public projects. He advised me to see the purpose of my time at university as a chance, as he put it, to light a fire that I could hang on to during all the years ahead of being a relatively junior architect. That fire, of course, being an agenda for my career as an architect. It seems clear to me from looking at the work in the exhibition, of course, these are just little headline projects or headline images for just a few projects that are included, that many fires have been lit over this year, and for those of you graduating this year, over the whole of your studies. These are fires that relate to very pressing matters of concern that students have engaged with through their research and design. The social care crisis, which has been so much in the news in recent days, the loss of biodiversity in cities and rural areas, the climate emergency, issues of race and gender in architectural practice and the built environment more broadly, the sustainability of construction, how food is produced, the nature of contemporary craft, and so on. The projects are incredibly varied, as much in scale as in location and focus. And yet I find the show as a whole to demonstrate aims that lie at the heart of the school, to constantly explore the possibility of design for the many rather than the few, to stretch the boundaries of the architectural discipline, to engage with important social, political, and environmental issues, and to show and enact care for and about the planet and the well-being of future generations, which is something that we've articulated as an aim and as a concern in the school for a long time. It's important to remember in looking at any of the projects that the work you see has been produced under the very challenging conditions that have prevailed this year. We began teaching in blended learning mode last September, but with the rise of the second wave of the pandemic, teaching was forced to retreat more and more online over the autumn. From Christmas, as everyone will remember, we were in the highest tier of lockdown and teaching remained online pretty much across the board until April. Access to studios was possible, however, in February and March. A booking system was put in place to manage access and ensure compliance with our detailed risk assessments. Speaking to the students leading the exhibition the other day reminded me of how significantly all this has shaped their experience of the year, as of being a student as a whole, from the experience of lonely times working from home and making do with home-based resources, to the experience of emerging possibilities to meet with colleagues and tutors. One student described to me as very poignant the walks which MArch2 convener Mari McVicker organised in order to have some non-screen-based time with students. At times, it seems they went a little mad, at least of the following photos, which one student chose to send me to capture the experience of studio during the lockdown. Anything to go by, to sleeping in studio. And I'm not sure what this is all about, really, but whether it's hiding behind the laptop or devouring the laptop and clearly feeling a bit cold and hiding under a jumper. Though I know it's been a really hard year in many ways, it is one that has seen the development of all sorts of skills, from enhanced computational skills to being able to communicate over multiple platforms, to work effectively with others over distance and analyze sites remotely. These are skills that mark out this generation of young architects from all the generations of young architects that precede them. So therefore, while knowing it's been a very hard year, I also feel confident that the development of these skills will serve our graduates in good stead, giving them something distinctive to offer the practices they enter, and indeed the wider professions of architecture and urban design and the wider building industry, in whichever part of that industry they choose to enter. So the next few slides are to do with both awards that have been, for which our students have been nominated, and I'm delighted to say that we've got a whole range of those. These awards haven't been given yet, so we felt that it was important to just highlight whose work we've put forward for those awards, and then after that, I'm just going to cover the main people who are involved in the exhibition. So we've got some external awards, and we've also got some internal awards. So the external awards, beginning from the top, are the AJ Prize for Sustainability, and we've nominated Josh Hayward for that. The AJ Student Prize nomination, we've nominated Anna Krishanowska. Then we come on to the RIBA Awards. For the RIBA President's Medal nomination for dissertation, we've nominated Georgina Myers. The Silver Medal, we've nominated Lena Mohammed. And also for the Silver Medal, we've nominated Simran Lal. And then we've got nominees for a new award in the school this year, which is from the Royal Society of Architects in Wales. They are nominating a student for a dissertation prize. And we have two nominees for that. We have Ruth Skidmore and we have Fakiha Mod Radi. And then we also have nominees for a thesis prize, which is a design focus prize. And there we have Henry Davis and Kian Ushioda. So many congratulations to those students for their nominations. And then we have the Welsh School of Architecture Awards. We have the T. Alwyn Lloyd Memorial Prize, which is the best overall performance in MArch2. And that is awarded to Thomas Rose. And then we have the Colwyn Fowkes Memorial Prize, which is for best MArch2 Design in the Built Environment student. And that is awarded to Molly Nash. So again, many congratulations to those two for their achievement. Then it just remains to say thank you very, very much indeed to all who've been involved in this wonderful show. It's been a real delight to work with all of you over the course of the last busy few weeks. So first of all, as the chair of the exhibition curation process, who's Georgina Myers, who's just put in an absolutely phenomenal amount of work, even up until 5 minutes or so before the show started, and managed to keep her cool and enthusiasm for the whole thing throughout. And then we've got a number of co-chairs, Rory Flatt, MacOurley James, and Zsofi Veers. I'm not going to list everybody in the curation team, but you can see all their names there, and you'll be able to see their names on the website, obviously, too. But absolutely fantastic effort from all of those people. And then we've got our a key staff member who, again, has been an absolute mainstay throughout, and incredibly grateful for her enthusiasm and capacity to work across staff and students, and with IT, and with our external consultant in recent weeks as well, and that's Dr. Hiral Patel. Talking of external consultant, we've had a great relationship, although it's been a very short-term one so far, with Succeed Digital, who came on board at the end of July to help us to add a layer of polish to the exhibition, and working with the skills in website design that we already had within the school and also the wider university. And then Stefan Williams, who's from Cardiff University, who again has put in a massive amount of work and shared his expertise in website building and coding. And again, Georgina Myers, who's been involved there. And then we've got an events team. These are the people who are involved in putting the festival together, and with student representatives for each of the main days. So again, I'm not going to read out those names, but you can see who they are, and these will be the key people next week during the festival. And then the sponsorship team, a group of students who've been engaged in raising sponsorship funds to help with the activities and also the festival itself. And then there's been a yearbook team and a 3D exhibition team. So massive congratulations, everybody. And of course, that's not just all of the people who are named there, but as I mentioned at the beginning, to everyone in the school, there isn't a single person who hasn't, whether directly or indirectly, contributed to the making of this show. I'd hope that you all feel a sense of accomplishment in relation to this. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the students to introduce the 3D exhibition, and we will then proceed from there to our keynote speaker of the evening, who is Alice Brownfield, who we're delighted to have with us this evening.
Hi, I'm Georgina. As Juliet mentioned, I have been chairing the exhibition this year. I have been a student at the WSA for 5 years now, as quite a lot of the fifth years who have now graduated. But I don't think any of them have been quite as challenging as this one, just like Juliet has said so well. It's been a year of isolation for all, a year outside of Wales for many, and a year without the studio culture and camaraderie that most of us are used to get us through a long night of work before the crits. This is why the end of the year, where many of us, our time at the WSA and the end of exams felt like a massive anticlimax and kind of a disappointment. And that kind of sentiment is what the festival was born out of. And I think most students working online have felt this way this year, because there's no way for you to celebrate with the people that you've been working with. And for most part, most people haven't actually met everyone in their studios or even their tutors this year. So it's definitely been very strange, and not the way that I'm hoping most of my fellow graduates want to end their many years at the WSA. So the exhibition and the festival evolved from this feeling of isolation and the need for a celebration that we've been missing. Instead of thinking what this exhibition may lack or struggle to cover because it's online, we tried to think what new opportunities could this exhibition bring. And of course, we built up what we said last year. We started with a simple website. Of course, that was the the minimum requirement. But soon, with a really passionate team, including Zsofi, Rory and MacOurley, which has quickly snowballed into, a much larger team, with everyone having different interests and passions, which reflect, the work of the student body as a whole. It spiraled into a whole different thing of itself, including a yearbook, a 3D virtual gallery, which you can walk through, which will be launched on Monday, that we'll be showing you a preview of today. And of course, the massive 5-day WSA Festival that we're launching this year. So we looked at everything that students were interested in and passionate about, from politics to urbanism to computation to heritage and to climate change. And there was so much variety and quality and work of the uploads. So we wanted to kind of reflect the work that everyone has put in this year and have it to be, the celebration that we all missed, rather than just something, a quick Zoom call that we attend. But I think the festival wants to be more than that, because like I said, we're looking for opportunities. And one thing that, this wonderful world of being online and Zoom calls has brought us is the opportunity to connect with those from afar, the opportunity to join webinars and workshops and panels and tons of events online for free most of the time with people we'd never have met otherwise. And I think it was Rory who initiated this by saying he had gone to a panel and gotten to meet someone he had admired for quite some time. And that is how the festival was born. It was the opportunity to do something new, something exciting, and something that reflected the students' passion, but also gave back to the community of the school. And these themes were born out of the work of Zsofi and her curation team. And I'm sure she'd love to tell you the process of that now, because I know it was quite complex and they were working on the themes and hashtags for many months. So yeah, Zsofi, take it away.
Thank you, Gina. Stepping into the 2020s, we have all developed an understanding of the urgency of not only accepting and researching the importance of sustainability, but on widening our perspectives and implementing innovative solutions. We believe that in developing a sustainable future for our prospective generations, we need to find a balance in preserving our heritage and regenerating history, designing with and for urban life and creating urban places and environments, applying and embracing computational methods for designing and fabrication, acting and responding to contemporary political issues, and responding to climate change crisis. You will be able to explore all students' works by these 5 themes. Alongside these, we developed our hashtags based on the uploaded student works. Sustainability is not about restricting the possibilities of the future. We see it as a chance to create alternative ways of living. Whether it is uncovering the history of a forgotten church or a tower built from repurposed materials, you can find yourself in a campaign raising awareness of racial equity, join the elderly needing to stay in care homes, or explore the possibilities of retaining water. Our hashtags show these variety of approaches taken to explore sustainability. Further to exploring our work, as Gina mentioned, we are starting a festival from Monday, which will expand on these 5 themes, bringing experts of the field into the conversation. Hope you will enjoy the show and stay with us for the whole length of the festival. Now I would like to give the stage to Rory, who will introduce you to our virtual exhibition.
Okay, so we've had some technical difficulties, which we are just currently trying to get over. So I thought I'd share some reflections on the year while we kind of hopefully get things sorted. I just, again, want to reiterate the thanks that everyone's given to the team. I know we've kind of had a lot of hurdles and challenges that we've had to cross this year. And that's not only in terms of planning the exhibition and planning the WSA show, but also in terms of learning and researching and having the academic year be so turbulent. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the school for their support. I think the way that, we've gone in and out of lockdowns, we've had so much conflicting advice from the government and authorities, that the school have responded in a way that maintained our safety, but also maintained our access to resources. And so a thank you to them. Okay, so we're going to have a bit of a change of schedule, just because that's the kind of Zoom world that we're living in. So I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker. So Alice Brownfield is an architect and associate director at Peter Barber Architects, a practice renowned for a number of groundbreaking urban social housing and homelessness projects. She is also a chair of Part W, an action group campaigning for gender equality across the built environment, and a trustee for the charity Action on Empty Homes. Alice is a recipient of the 2021 MJ Long Prize for Excellence in Practice in recognition of her housing work and advocacy for equity in the built environment. Alice started her architecture journey at the WSA and continues to support the school as a guest design tutor. Her work reflects the core values held by the school, and we are proud to celebrate her fantastic achievements. So without further ado, I welcome Alice to take the virtual floor.
Hi there. Thanks, Rory. That was a really lovely introduction. I am really honoured to be here today and really appreciate the invitation. It's quite a big deal for me. I have a really big affinity with the WSA. As Rory mentioned, I was a graduate myself 10 years ago now, a bit scary. And I've got sort of a Welsh dad. I've been brought up a Welsh football and rugby fan and all that sort of stuff. And so just a real affinity with the WSA, and I am really delighted to join you on an evening which is about celebrating all of the hard work of students and staff over the last year, and a time to reflect and kind of gather as we go forwards. So it's been brilliant. I've had a sneak preview of the curated exhibition, and it's been really brilliant to see, and hopefully you'll see that shortly after I finish nattering at you. And to see all the incredible hard work of the students and the staff after what has been and still is an incredibly tough year. We found ourselves in a continued global pandemic this academic year, relatively isolated at times and each in our own, with our own personal challenges. We really experienced globally how the built environment around us affects our lives, and we've come to understand much more about the huge inequities that exist in housing, in access to private outdoor space, to open green space, to clean air, to safe jobs, to childcare, etc. And it would be impossible not to recognise the very unique context of the year for students and staff too. Obviously, it's been said already by Juliet that the physical contact time in studio has been minimal, but you've all found ways to work creatively and collaboratively, ways that cross borders, time zones, and fundamentally that are supportive of each other and inclusive. Your generation will have skills the rest of us won't fully understand for years to come. I think I did say to Jeannie the other day, she's making me unemployable. And on top of that, you will see in a minute just some of the very high quality work and ideas that students are thinking about. So the wider context that we find ourselves in is sometimes quite overwhelming. A crisis of climate, of housing, of health and social care, issues of racial inequity, of women's rights being taken away, of land use and policy. And one of the values that WSA instilled in me as a young architect was the belief that our work as architects and as designers is really heavily intertwined on a daily basis with societal issues, housing, infrastructure, public space. We are designing and building the fabric within which society functions, and that's a really inspiring thing about the work that you'll see in a short while is a level of engagement with those pressing issues. And I think what comes across consistently through WSA work over many years is that that's all at a really human scale. There's a kind of compelling sense in the work, I think, that there's a value in architecture which is its social impact, not corporate vanity. And there is an urgency too in how the school responds to our climate crisis and sustainability, and most importantly, a sensitivity in understanding all of the diverse things that true sustainability means, looking sort of beyond it, thinking about replenishing, restructuring and improving. There is work that reimagines both the rural and the urban and in turn social futures. It understands and advocates for the role of design in how we think about and action care in our society, for example. So congratulations to the students. Your work really pushes the boundaries of what architecture can do. Keep hold of that sense of excitement, because it doesn't end when you leave uni or you go into your next academic year. It just starts. And so I wanted to share with you a little bit of what I became interested in at WSA and how that's led into the work that I do now. And I think maybe I'll speak for another sort of 10, 15 minutes, so we'll try and keep it snappy. So during my time at WSA, I became really heavily interested in housing and urban inequities and the role that design has to play in addressing these, creating the potential for social action. And these are values from the WSA that have endured with me in my work after uni. So I thought I'd share briefly how some of the things I started to get bothered about and interested in during my time at WSA have fed into my work since. So I will just share my screen with you. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. So since leaving the WSA, I've worked for a few different architectural practices of varying scales, but I've been working now for 8 years for a small practice called Peter Barber Architects in London and King's Cross, where I'm an associate director. There are 8 of us, so we're quite small, which I have really loved and benefited from because I hear all the conversations going on in the office. I was a part 1 here many moons ago, and it was great to hear conversations from planning policy, design to cash flow. We work primarily with local authorities, designing public housing and homelessness accommodation. This is us out on a march. This is us being a little bit less serious in the office. And this is us being a lot less serious outside of the office. All of our work is underpinned by the belief that space conditions and is in turn conditioned by society and culture, and that architecture can create the potential for social action and activity. And I really feel that that is a value that I kind of picked up at the WSA and carries through now in our built work. So I'm just going to show you a couple of projects which I think draw those values out. I'll keep them really brief. They're going to be a bit of a whirlwind, but if you are interested, you can always find out more online. So the first project I just want to share with you is a project that we have done for the London Borough of Newham. It's a social housing project. And one of the things that I always remember about the WSA and the teachings, and enjoying going back and teaching more recently as well, is the use of looking back through historical precedents and understanding how they might work for the societies that we want to live in the future. And so this project looked at back-to-back housing, which was a housing that originated in the 19th century. It was very cheap to build. It was built very quickly for workers. It was actually outlawed in 1909 because of certain issues to do with single aspect dwellings. People were sharing a bathroom. But fundamentally, they were fantastic for housing because they were arranged around streets. And we think streets are a really ingenious way of organising space. They mean people can kind of come into contact with each other a bit more frequently. And they were also very cost efficient to build. So we started to think, well, how can we get rid of these issues of single aspect dwellings and poor ventilation and shared bathrooms, etc. And this is a sketch that Pete did for the proposals for some new houses for Newham, which are back to back. And so essentially this is a house in the front and it's back to back with another house on the other side looking into this little courtyard space here. And so we made sure that these dwellings were dual aspect, were bright, had lots of ventilation, and fundamentally everyone has their own bathroom. This is an image of it just after it was finished. It's looking a bit sparse here, but you can get a sense of the scale of the space. And what's been really lovely going back there over the last few years is seeing it being taken over by residents living there and putting, life into the buildings. These are some of the spaces which are inside. The second project I just wanted to share with you is a homelessness project for the London Borough of Camden. And this is the site is surrounded by the Red Line here. It's an old Victorian building at the front, and then a single-storey, long, I think possibly 1960s building to the end. And we were asked by Camden to come in and sort of try to de-institutionalise this place and provide also more rooms. And so we started looking at almshouse typologies. Almshouses traditionally built to house the poor, but really amazing because their central courtyards, which they're arranged around, become the kind of social heart of the scheme. And these are some amazing examples. The bottom one's from Belgium and the top one is from East London. And this is the scheme that we came up with, which was to keep the front building, to remove the back, which was really had some quite serious structural issues, and to create a new rind of effectively little micro homes around the courtyard. And what we've done in this instance is just take away any corridors so that the courtyard in the middle, which we hope will be this amazing allotment space, becomes the circulation, it becomes the social heart of the project. And what that means is that everyone who lives here gets their own little home, not a room off a corridor that's dark and long and feels very institutionalized. So this is a sketch of how we imagine that space being. Everyone has a different colour front door, so there's a kind of sense of ownership and pride about where people live. And the council, Camden Council, are working with residents who are really interested to learn about growing, about nutrition. So we're really excited about this project. This is a little model of one of the little homes. So rather than having a 8 square metre bedroom, which has got your sort of toilet in one corner and a desk, these are 14 square metres and they're over 2 little floors. Everyone has their own front door and with a bed on a mezzanine above. And this is what it looks like currently. We're hoping that lawn goes and a shed appears and a greenhouse and people start taking ownership of it. There's a communal kitchen where we're sat looking at the screen. So we hope that those doors will kind of swing open and that there'll be barbecues and lots of social events that happen in that space. And we've had really good feedback from residents who are living there, which is really lovely. That's a little view out of one of the homes. And then lastly, just to sort of share that we're still doing some theoretical projects in the office, some projects which take us outside of some of the constraints we have when we have real life clients and allow us to continue in a sort of student basis, thinking about ideas, a what if scenario. And this is just some sketches of a project we did a few years ago called A Rough Draft for a Decent Neighbourhood. And it's the idea of a neighbourhood being conceived around people's relationships with each other and the landscape they inhabit. And we made a little model, which was featured in the RA summer exhibition. And then lastly, this is a project which is called 100 Mile City, and it's in response to a document which advocated for the solution to the housing crisis being to build in our greenbelt and our countryside. And we wanted to challenge that. We didn't think that was a particularly sustainable thing to be doing. We think we should be protecting our countryside. And so we looked at the greenbelt around London, which is what you can see in this red line here. It's roughly 100 miles long. It's wiggles. It's slightly undefinable, but you can see in this little sketch here, we started to think about how cities grow. They grow from the inside, typically out. They kind of sprawl out and gradually start eating into the countryside. And we started to think about the idea of containing that space. And Pete had come up with this idea for producing a rind of housing around the edge of London, around the greenbelt, a really dense and socially active rind of houses, and then densifying London from the outside in. And so this is a drawing of 100 Mile City. This is the rind of buildings, of homes, of new neighbourhoods, of squares that line between productive countryside and suburbia. And gradually, not an entirely wholesome popular idea for many, but an idea which just sort of says, what if we were to do this? And the idea is that those sort of neighbourhoods, the very dense street-based neighbourhoods, would start to re-densify London from the outside in and protect our countryside. Just some images of what those spaces may be like. Okay, so just very briefly, I also want to talk about some stuff I'm doing outside the office. And alongside my work at PBA, I'm a chair of Part W, which is an action group of women campaigning for gender equity in the built environment. It's a group founded by architect, activist, and Part WSA unit leader Zoe Berman in 2018. And Zoe was becoming increasingly aware of the rights of women coming under threat. We were seeing a taking away of global civil rights. And so Zoe invited a number of women working in the built environment, architects, engineers, transport planners, education, media, to get together over crisps and some beer and wine and to discuss our role in challenging this. And hence Part W was born. We set out with the aim to look more closely at the challenges around gender equity in design and develop some positive solutions. And now one of the issues that kept coming up was about representation and visibility, looking at the way in which those who work in architecture, design and placemaking are or are not seen and valued. And we looked at representation in international design awards. We decided to look more closely at one in particular, which was the RIBA Gold Medal, although we could have used many examples, like the Pritzker Prize, for example. And this is a list. This is all at the time of doing this in 2019. This was the list of the recipients of the RIBA Gold Medal. It had been running for 172 years, which you can see there. These are the women that have won the award in 172 years. You can see there's 4 women and 168 men. And actually 3 of those women are husband and wife couples. And this is the only woman who's won it in her own right. And we thought, this can't be right. This isn't really representative of our understanding of who is producing interesting and important contributions to the built environment, not just now, but throughout history. And so we decided to, with our tongues firmly in our cheeks, create an alternative list. And this alternative list, the idea was that we would populate it full of women who'd made significant contributions to the built environment from 1848 onwards. And so these are all the fantastic people who got involved, who held up Bob Dylan style placards with their nominations and the year. And this is what the crowdsourced list looked like. It's an unfinished thing. Everything of this nature is unfinished. There are still many gaps in it. There are still many women who are not shown on here that should be. And so it's always one that we'll expand and add to. But we were really delighted that in the following year, the RIBA Gold Medal was awarded to Grafton Architects, who are a female-led practice by Shelley McNamara and Yvonne Farrell, and that it was also awarded to a practice, recognising the collective nature of architecture. And more recently, we were really delighted that the RIBA Gold Medal was awarded to Sir David Adjaye, who was the first Black recipient of the award, which is really quite shocking, but cause for celebration too. We've also since run campaigns addressing significant imbalance of women represented on Wikipedia, for example. Only 18% of English language written biographies are of women, 18%, it's a bit crazy. And soon we'll formally be launching our campaign, Women's Work London, which is a crowdsourced mapping project celebrating the work of women in our city. We'd love to do a Women's Work Cardiff, so any suggestions and helping hands welcome. And we've also been really delighted to be invited to speak about gender equitable design by various organisations, including Radio 4, which Zoe was fabulous on, although a bit daunting. At the Houses of Parliament, we talked to about gender equitable design for their redesign. We've talked to the Design Museum, and we were really delighted to be recognised by Wallpaper, and this is one of the shots here, for being an organisation, a standout organisation working collectively towards positive change and a hopeful future. And that's Yemi Aladerin there, one of our core members, Zoe Berman in the middle, and someone on the right. Outside of that, I'm also a trustee for Action Empty Homes, which is a really small charity that aims to bring long-term homes back into use for people in housing need. There are 360,000 long-term empty homes in England, 360,000. There are 330,000 families in homeless accommodation or temporary accommodation. So this is a charity working to address that issue and to really see the opportunity of it. And I'd really encourage students to look for trustee opportunities, because it's been a really fascinating insight for me. I've mostly been learning. I'm not sure I've been contributing a huge amount at the moment, but I've mostly been learning, and it's been a fantastic experience. And then, as Rory mentioned earlier, I was really honoured in March of this year to be awarded the MJ Long Prize for Excellence in Practice, partly for my work on Kiln Place, which is this project here, which is a housing project for London Borough of Camden, as well as my work with Part W and Action on Empty Homes. And none of that is possible without people around you who are supporting you and inspiring you. And so that's my view of that, is that it's a very collaborative award. And I just wanted to leave you with some other fantastic organisations who I think are fantastic examples of students leaving university and really wanting to kind of grab hold of their agency, not just as architects, but as citizens. And these are just some of the organisations who are doing really fantastic work campaigning for a better future. So I'm just going to stop sharing. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say two things. Firstly, congratulations to all involved putting the exhibition together and its associated events. I know there are too many in the wider exhibition team to mention in person, and Juliet has already done that before, but a few who I've met or heard about this week include Rory, Zsofi, MacOurley, Dan, Julia, Mathila, Adana, the Saucer team, and of course, an extra special mention to the fairly prolific Gina, who I understand has led the team on all of this. It's quite remarkable. I always think that student exhibitions are inherently exciting. They're places for the celebration of ambitious ideas, but this one is also accompanied by a festival. So it's a really unique thing. It's a really unique thing for a school to do, not only curating student work, so it's not in the units that would vary, it's mixed, and it's mixed between years, which is quite remarkable. Not only curating and showcasing student work, but also involving students in the hard-hitting conversations, engaging with your own agency and taking values and ideas from your work into the wider world. Congratulations to all students and to staff. I hope that you can, after we've seen a little bit of the exhibition, that you can enjoy the rest of the evening wherever you are and whoever you're with. And at some point, I hope you can get together and have a really good time together. If I was asked to give advice for those who are graduating, it would be to most importantly realise that the ideas and the values that you've explored at the WSA don't stop when you leave uni. Keep exploring, find others who are interested in the same things. The global context can feel really overwhelming at times, but you are going out there to sort it out. That's your job. So hold on to your idealism, otherwise these things can get the better of us. Find your agency, have fun, keep in touch with the WSA, and believe that something better is possible. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alice, for that. That was a really interesting and inspiring talk. It was fantastic to hear about your work, but also how your interests in housing and social equity were born during your time as a student at WSA. It just spoke so well to my point about lighting a fire during your time as a student, and then really hanging on to that. So those are the beliefs that you then develop on through your career. So thanks so much for talking about that and giving us an insight into how that's worked for you. As I was looking at your slides and having also talked about digital skills that students have developed this year, I was just so enjoying all the hand-drawn sketches, really beautiful, detailed drawings and imaginations of what a place could become over time and through use and through the living of a community. And just remembering how important those haptic and physical, haptic skills, but also physical models are for students, even as they continue to develop the digital. And it was great also to hear about your work with Part W and Action on Empty Homes, and the kind of reminder that being an architect can be much broader than delivering particular projects, but can involve work like that, working for the third sector, and so forth. So I hope that that's been really inspiring for our students. And just before you spoke, of course, it was great to hear some of the testimonies from our students and experiences of how they found the year. And I think Gina's moving words about both reflecting on how tough it's been, but also being able to see now what some of the benefits of the year have been. And a particular take home for me was the chance to connect online with people that students and us also as staff wouldn't have been able to connect with easily previously, at least not without flying thousands of miles around the world. So I think that has been a really important thing this year, and it's something definitely to hang on to. So I think we're now going to hand over to the students again to provide a preview of the show. So Rory, is that you?
Thank you, Juliet. So, as you're all aware, we have been challenged with creating a completely virtual WSA show experience this year. In this section of the launch night, we will be offering a teaser of the virtual tour of some of the selected works, accompanied by a short summary of each theme and how it relates to the store's values and experiences of students this year. But before we begin, we must give thanks to our valued and generous sponsors. We extend our thanks first to Foster and Partners, Corsafine and Wright, and Justico and Riles, without whom the development of the show, festival, and yearbook would not have been possible. Furthermore, we would like to thank Alan Murphy, Gianni Botsford Architects, Corsafine Wright, Kate Darby, and Scable for their contribution to the new WSA Show Awards and their jurying of selected works. I will now pass on to Mathila, who will take us through the first theme, which will be architecture and politics.
Sorry.
So we'll move there in a second, Mathila, sorry.
Right, so to start off with architecture and politics, the theme addresses the political aspects of design. So the virtual building and the website showcases research, written works, and design projects across the year groups, which features addressing social political concerns. So in this room, you will see some of those works. An example of those projects would be how architecture adapts to the impact of trade following the recent Brexit, or a project addressing the new normal, so modifying and reshaping for post-COVID environment. The theme is also a voice for architectural activism, so it's an opportunity to educate and raise awareness to the future generation of designers. Following this evening, as part of our new digital festival, so as you know, starting from Monday, we will look further into architecture and politics. So on Monday, split into two parts, the afternoon featuring young independent group, so FAF and Involved magazine. They'll give their insights on the power of students and how students can address global political crisis through their design projects. And the evening will kick off from a talk from Zoe Berman, as Alice previously mentioned, founder of Part W, an action group that campaigns for gender equality. This will also be followed by a discussion panel titled Addressing a Diverse Future, featuring Zoe herself. Insight would also be brought from Charlie, the founder of FAF, Sarah Osei, a passionate writer on social equity at Involved, and Femi Orensaya, an alumni of WSA and also the current chair of RIBA for Change. I will now pass this on to Rory, who covers urbanism and community.
Sorry, 1 second. So the next theme we move on to is urbanism and community. In the context of social, economic, and environmental threats to our cities, towns, and neighbourhoods, the projects under this theme seek to influence a different path for development. One that is more equitable, diverse, and empowering of local voices. The projects define new ways of living in and experiencing our environments through complex interventions with selections grounding seemingly radical ideas in real, achievable contexts. This theme explores the power and influence of the environment on our communities and reflects the desperate need for change in the outdated approach to urban development. Despite the obvious challenges set by the pandemic, students have doubled their efforts to truly understand the context and communities within which they are working.
I've just paused that. I think Rory's cut out there.
Sorry about that. My internet seems to have disappeared. I think maybe it's best if we move on to the next theme.
There's a couple of, about half a minute until we get to the next theme. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Rory, to travel across the hallway. Speed up the journey a bit. Teleport a little bit across the hall. Right. Right, there we go. I'm going to talk about computation and innovation, which is a theme that I'm particularly interested in. As technology evolves, so does the relationship between architects and their tools, and we are constantly reinventing the way in which we practice architecture. So these projects on computation and innovation use innovative technologies to respond to lots of different things and to create really varied architectural forms, as you can see. These tools have been used to address things from the climate crisis through environmental analysis and optimization and sustainable fabrication methodologies. The resulting projects showcase intelligent design and the research that corresponds to computational analysis through form finding, machine learning, and algorithmic methods. There's quite a variety of projects here. Some of them study natural phenomena, some of them use tools such as Ladybug and Grasshopper to explore these ideas a bit further. The events that we're running that day are quite varied. The first thing is a workshop that I'm running myself, which is anything but a workshop, which is aimed at young designers who are trying to understand the world of computation, which I understand is quite a daunting one as a gentle introduction. And then I have very luckily gotten in, Theodoros Galanos who is behind part of the AI on software such as Ladybug, and developing a really interesting software called Infrared, which is kind of a comprehensive urban design software using AI. And he's coming in to talk about the frontiers of performance design, which will be very exciting. And then in the evening, Neil Leach is the key speaker. He's a British architect and professor. Currently teaches at FIU, EGS and Tongi, and has taught at the AA, Harvard, Columbia, Cornell, SciArc, and many more. He has been a NASA research fellow working on a 3D printer for the moon and Mars, and has published over 40 books on architectural theory and digital practice. So I'm very excited to hear him talk. And then we have a panel on the future of architecture, architects, and artificial intelligence. We've got lots of really interesting people coming in, including an architect from our sponsors and partners, as well as some PhD candidates, myself and my friend Maya Mystery from the US, who runs a blog on engineering and architecture, looking at people who study machine learning. I will now pass it on to Jamal, who will talk about history and heritage. Sorry, I ran this in the wrong order.
Thanks, Gina. So yeah, we're getting to history and heritage. So introducing the themes surrounding history and heritage. WSA exhibition brings together works from a variety of different years under different units, and looking at Unit 20, Designing Histories, alongside Group 17, Centre for Alternative Technologies, as well as Group 12's Medieval Square, just to name a few. So history and heritage as a theme within the exhibition has kind of a broad definition, but primarily focuses on looking at how we see architecture of old and delving into the riches of our community's history, as well as its memory. And heritage can also be referred to the conservation of not just our buildings, but our built environment, the landscapes and the places and sites that cities are built on. So it's one of our key themes because as designers, we place an important value to the past in order to design for the present and for the future also. So design is also simulated for us from the existing, and we learn from our predecessors. The range of projects within the WSA within history explore from our histories in unique and independent ways. And examples of this are how we experiment with the new and old, we investigate political agendas through architecture, and we even question cultures and multiculturalism within modern day society. And all these projects are undertaken within core values of sustainability at the heart of design. So projects under history and heritage not only look at the importance of our past, but the issues that arise in present day. And we instill a carefully curated choice of materials, structures, amongst a variety of other principles of sustainability. So reflecting on this introduction, some of the key projects you might see as is kind of zooming around and definitely to kind of have a look at during this exhibition are in particularly highlighted the Reliquary for the Forgotten, School of Campanology and Casting New Histories, Re-inhabiting a Ruin, Pembroke Ferry Living Archive, and Virtue Lies in the Struggle and Not the Prize, just to name and highlight just a few of the projects that are currently exhibiting. So the History and Heritage exhibition also creates a really strong range of projects all throughout, which I obviously strongly recommend to come have a look and support, because this is obviously my unit personally. But during the History and Heritage Day, which is on the Thursday, we also have a keynote speaker, Magda Sibley, as well as an award presentation, a panel discussion, as well as a panel discussion on tools of sustainability and growth within history and heritage. And that's all for history. So I shall pass you on to the next theme, which is climate change by Adana.
Good evening. My name is Adana. With the theme of climate change this year has been ever more relevant with the publishing of this year's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, and also the continuous echoing of the statistic that 40% of the UK's carbon emissions are from buildings throughout their lifetime. Many of the student selection of sites this year have been local to the UK in response to the pandemic, and have in turn allowed for the direct engagement to the effects of climate change locally in the UK. These circumstances have been pivotal for projects for realizing the role we as designers hold, and this can be seen in many of the projects this year. The 2021 cohort have covered topics like rewilding and the support of ecosystems, highlighting the shift in perspective required for the designers to consider more than the site microclimate. A few projects considering flood resilience, which is devastating communities and threatening 1 in 8 homes in the UK. Also tackling larger systems of circularity and material embodied carbon like hempcrete, and rethinking the role of the architect in creating sustainable environments. This year's great edition of the WSA Festival allows us to further and expand the conversations of the students' topics. The closing day, next Friday, will start with a talk by WSA alumni and 2021 Architecture Foundation's New Architects cohort, Cochin Studio, discussing their projects and sustainability within their process of design. This will be followed by a talk in the evening by Reba J. Rising Star of 2020, Scott MacAurley, on the founding of Anthropocene Architecture School in the response to climate emergency. This will be followed again in the evening by a panel discussion on design for the climate, resilience versus adaptation, questioning and shining a light on current efforts in architecture to respond to the climate emergency. I will be joined on the panel with the school's Hester Buck, a PhD candidate, with her project on the focus of co-design and ecological awareness, and Mariana Marchesi, lecturing at the WSA, and her research into circularity and community integration in the system, and a few more external panelists to be announced. The WSA will close with the launch of WSA's very own Architecture Student Climate Action Network, WSA CAN. Be sure to support and keep an eye out through the year, please. I will now pass on to, for the closing.
I think we're passing back on to Juliet, who is officially going to kick off the exhibition and the festival.
Okay, thanks, Georgina, and thanks everybody for that absolutely fantastic tour of the exhibition, which of course has been placed into a refurbished building that many of us haven't even been in yet, and which we're going to be looking forward to inhabiting and re-inhabiting over the coming year. So that's a fantastic taster of things to come, as well as a retrospective of the past year, all brought together into a virtual physical space. I think it also served as a fantastic introduction to the events happening in the festival next week, which I'm really looking forward to dipping into when I can. I think we should just finish with a round of applause, really. I think it's been a really great effort. And I'm so grateful to the students and to all of those named, to Hiral, to Stefan, to Alice for joining us this evening, to all of the speakers next week, to the sponsors, and so on. So and to everybody else who's been part of it and made it possible throughout the year. So thanks very much, and congratulations.